The Declaration of the Rights of Men and Citizens. So, inspired by the Enlightenment ideas, inspired by the English Bill of Rights, and inspired by the American Declaration of Independence, these men of the National Assembly, they get together and they write an incredibly important document called the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen. And in this document, it states that all men have guaranteed rights that the king cannot take away from them. He says that all people will pay equal taxes, because before this, the only group paying taxes was the third estate. The first estate, the rich the rich clergy, the church, they didn't pay taxes. The nobles didn't pay taxes. Only the rich, only the third estate, only the bottom 98% paid taxes. And they said that will never happen again. They said if you want a job in public office, appointment to public offices, jobs in the government should be based on talent, not based on family bloodlines or connections or nobility or anything along these lines. This idea is called meritocracy. It's an idea that's part of our government. They said that all people should be equal in front of the law. And they basically said, and the king, he can like it, because that's just the way it's going to be. On October 5th of that year, a group of Parisian women march to the king's palace in Versailles, which is just a few dozen miles, maybe a dozen miles up the road, carrying pitchforks, broomsticks, and pistols, the famous Parisian fishwomen, as they were called. And they storm the king's palace in Versailles. They're chanting the name of the queen, Marie Antoinette. They're gonna grab this family and they're gonna bring them back to Paris. You guys living out here in Versailles, this is over. They say, we're hungry, we don't have any food, and we're gonna get you. And the king finally agrees. He goes, no, I'll come back to Paris. That's cool. And in fact, I'll bring an entire carriage full of flour, and you guys can make bread. And this is when the line that everyone knows Marie Antoinette for, let them eat cake, is said. Although a lot of people say that she didn't in fact say that line, this was the moment when supposedly Marie Antoinette says, just let them eat cake. And here is a picture of the Parisian women marching to get the king. So, using Enlightenment ideas, right? So they bring the king back to Paris, and one of the first things they do is they say the church is no longer so powerful. This is a no. They can't have all this land. The church was historically the largest landowner in France. The church didn't pay any taxes. They said that just isn't going to work anymore. We're going to take control of the church. And they take a lot of the church land and they sell it to raise money for their revolution. They pass laws that say that church workers will be chosen by us or by the state, which they were the state at this point. The National Assembly was. And keep in mind that they still at this point believed that the king was in charge. What they wanted was what's called the constitutional monarchy, which is a government where there's a constitution of rules that had to be followed, but there's still a king in charge. And he just kind of is the boss of the government. As long as he gives certain powers to the National Assembly, he can stay in charge. This is what England had at this point, a constitutional monarchy. Well, outside of Paris, this makes many Catholics upset, and we're going to start to see that there's going to be a little push and pull within the revolution itself. In 1791, they create a new constitution that limits the king's power, that gives the legislative body certain powers that the king can't take away. They say that only men over 25 who pay a lot of money in taxes, though, can be part of this new government, which is kind of upsetting to the people outside of the city, right? Remember, now we're going to find that a lot of the revolution takes place in the cities, especially Paris. Um, and at this point, the king tries to escape. Okay. In the middle of the night, the king packs up, he and his family, and they get into a carriage and they start heading towards the Netherlands. Okay. Remember, or I didn't mention this, but look, his wife, Marie Antoinette, she was Austrian. Okay. And Austria was really mad with the French at this point of the revolution. They did not want to see their queen under captivity. They felt like both the king and the queen were prisoners in Paris. So the king thought, look, if I can just get out of France, I can make it into the Netherlands, into Belgium, or something, and I'll be fine. I'll be safe. I'll be protected by the Austrians. Okay. And he says, once I get out of Paris too, the people in the countryside, they're still loyal to me. They don't believe what these radicals in Paris say. But he was wrong. And just near the border to the Netherlands in the northeastern part of France, a soldier sees the king trying to escape. And instead of letting him go, like the king had hoped, he calls the other soldiers by and says, this is the king, we're trying to escape. And they drag the king and his family back to Paris. And at this point, the king is a prisoner of Paris. Okay? When word gets back to Austria and Prussia that the king had tried to escape, that he was now basically a prisoner, and oh, by the way, so is Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette was the king of Austria's sister. Okay? So they start rumbling and sending messages to Paris like, hey, you guys, you better let her go. You better let these two go. This isn't going to fly. We're going to invade. And as soon as they start making those threats, the French invade Austria. They invade the people, the Prussians, the people of the Netherlands. They launch attacks against the forces that they're afraid are going to attack them. And they start off really bad. Right? They're losing this war. All the while, there are protests going on in Paris about the shortage of food. And a radical group of people within Paris decide, this isn't flying, this isn't going to work, we need to take control. And they call for a national convention, and they say, we're taking over the government. This is no longer going to be a constitutional monarchy. The king tried to escape. It's time for some radical measures to try and protect us from the Austrians and to keep this revolution alive.